Um, I can't tell you, it's kind of crazy, right? Because so many of you came here to see the speakers, Cheryl, because she's obviously a wonderful person, all the different talks and all the education you can get here. But I don't think the speakers really tell you that, for instance, I came to see you. You are the future for, my generation. You are the builders that I'm looking to fix problems that we'll have caused. And so it's really wonderful to see you come out here, and so thank you so much. Today, I'm going to speak with you about kind of teams and advisors, which is kind of a very tactical way of thinking about what you do with your life. I'm going to obviously position it around startups and building companies and building things, but fundamentally, a lot of the things you just heard, most of your life is going to be spent with just a few people if you decide to do things. When it comes to startups, the first thing to know is that it's hard. I have a number for you, and I will give someone a big prize if you can tell me what it is. 27,046.5. Does anyone have an idea what that number is? 27,046.5. That is the average lifespan of your average Malaysian, according to census data from 2013. That's not that much time. For those of you who are about 25, 26, 27, you've already spent 10,000 of those days. So there's not much time left. But it's also a tremendous amount of time. But I just want to explain that when you're building something, whether that's a startup or like a project, you're spending a tremendous amount of valuable resource with a certain group of people. And who you choose to do that with is going to be one of the greatest decisions that you make in your entire life. I'm 27 now, 10,238 days old, and I'm basically, most of my life is over. Let me tell you a story about how I got into this world and why I'm in front of you today. When I was graduating school, it was a terrible time. It was 2009, 2010, and the markets had crashed. So I had planned, like Vishana talked about, I had planned on just this wonderful life of being an iBanker. I was like, I'm going to go to New York and make a bunch of money and drive Ferraris at 5 miles per hour in New York traffic, right? So I can look really cool. Because you have to go slow in a Ferrari. That's what people don't get. You can't go fast because then no one sees who you are, right? You're like, but it didn't work out that way. And so instead, a couple of friends of mine and I decided to start a company called Punched. So Punched, you can see this is on top of my roof in San Francisco, was 3 very, very dumb 21-year-olds. So this is Niket right here to the right, Reed in the middle, Xandra on the left. And each of us had this very important role that we thought we brought and skills that we brought to Punched. So, I was kind of the hustler. Reed was the hacker because he was a better programmer than I was. And Xander was our designer who really fought for the user. He was like the true, empathetic, I love the world, humans are awesome guy. And what we did was we put, really simply, those buy 10, get 1 free cards that you get at coffee shops. We just wanted more free stuff. We were in college, and we were like, okay, we shouldn't have to keep all these things in a wallet. That's dumb. So we're going to put it all into the phone so it reminds us automatically when we should get free stuff. Very small idea in concept, but it turned out to really resonate with a lot of people. And, we had gone through, we in the US back in 2008, 2009, 2010, also was starting to get systems like what you have here with MaGIC. We were at 500 startups where we were both gained investment and we were able to pitch. This is Reed at Demo Day. Reed and I kind of did a rock, paper, scissors to see who would have to go up. And I guess he lost because he's up there and had to speak. And I was in the back. And that evening, just by going up and talking about our idea, we had built it out at schools. We were testing it out. We were able to secure our first funding that night. So as a 22-year-old, a person handed us a check for $150,000, which is insane. It was the most amount of money I'd ever seen in my entire life, to try to build Punched, okay? And we took that and quickly expanded, and a lot of people, luckily, were really, really into the idea of getting free stuff. So that helped us tremendously. And we were in 1,000 businesses. We were operating in 14 countries, many, many, many users. And we had doubled the team size and hired a lot of our friends. And Google, at the same time, was very interested in getting into basically this local space. They have this product called Google Maps that I'm sure many of you use every day. And they wanted to make sure that they had good data on all of the millions and millions of stores worldwide. And we were part of that mission to get that data to become available and then accessible and easily searchable for all of you. And they acquired us into their Maps and Wallet division in 2011. And in Google Wallet, we built a bunch of products around payments and coupons and systems and technologies for small businesses. And yet, despite all of our work, everything, in 2013, we were shut down. Which kind of brings me, I guess, to the whole point of this entire topic, is that we had spent 3 years together, about 1,000 days, with people that I didn't know at first and then knew very intimately afterwards. And despite all of our work having been shut down, I did take something away from it. I have friends for life. This is a picture of Xander, Reed, and myself at Xander's wedding in Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. And Reed and I are both his best men there, part of his groomsmen squad. And I was thinking a lot about this over the last few years. You know, when you come and you come to things like MaGIC and you learn how to build and you want to go and build a company and change the world, the irony is that we only hear about the people who succeeded, right? What happens to everyone else? Is it bad that people fail? No way. But you actually might get something even better than building a company and money and other things. You actually get a set of friends and people that you will have fought with in ways that you can't even imagine. And that's what I really got from Punched in many ways, is a set of friends and a tight, tiny little network that I can trust with my life. And there's something about this that I see continuously in all the major important companies and even companies that didn't do the big things that they had set out to do, is that elite teams fundamentally are at the core of people who change the world. Can anyone tell me who this group of people is? Anyone, just blurt it out. Ah, okay, here we go. Yes, that's right. This is the first 30-odd people at Google taken in their offices in Mountain View in approximately 1997, okay? And when I got into Google, I had worked for a woman named Marissa Mayer, who's now the CEO of Yahoo, and she was, she's in this photo right up there, the blonde one, and, she was, I think, 23, 24 at the time. 50% of the people you saw in that photo until 2012, which is 15 years after the company started, were still there. Still operating in huge capacities. They went from a market capitalization of $0 in 1997, and 15 years later, as a group, together, they had a market capitalization of $350 billion. There's no one on this planet that doesn't know what Google is. That just can't possibly be chance, right? Something about this group of people, this team, this set of people, their mission and everything that they did together allowed them to become the extraordinary individuals that they were and also make an extraordinary impact on the world. And when you really think about building anything, your vision, the first step, as kind of in many ways the last presentation finished on, is about finding the people who will help you do that. And that's kind of what I really want to explain and try to educate today on. So a strong team, everyone says it. It's essential. They just say, oh, you need to have really smart people. We don't talk about how do you know who's smart. We don't talk about how do you know if you're aligned with another person. Most of the time, you're at a network and you're like, hey, man, I'm trying to build something. Do you code? And that's it, right? Because I don't code. I also don't design. Actually, I don't do anything. I need other people to do all these things for me. So I'm just here now having this beer. And you see that over and over again. And they quickly try to build anything. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that the people who fundamentally changed the world had very, very deep relationships with the people that they did it with. And that was obviously created over time through what they were building, but also beforehand. And that's what's really important. So those team members that you build, whatever you're going to build with, You should treat them as people you'll probably be in their wedding. You should hope for that. Because what's the point? What is the point of a company? It is nothing but a group of humans. And that's maybe all you'll get out of this. But that actually can be the most valuable thing. The people you surround yourself with who advise you are extremely important as well. Their job is to keep you on the rails. How many of you have gone bowling before? Bowling? Like kind of pins, you kind of... I'm a terrible bowler. Don't go bowling with me. But sometimes you can put up these bumper walls if you're really bad. That's what I do, right? Right? So you can't possibly gutter. That's your advisors. Their job is to help you prevent from falling into the gutter. Because you're putting yourself through so much stress, so much risk, so much troubles for the betterment of something else that you put yourself basically at risk. And their job is to keep you in there. And capital or customers is the way that you keep your business afloat. So assuming that you're not trying to become a charity and give away all your money and you're trying to help generate value, then you have to be able to do that through customers or capital from, people who will fund you. And so those are the kind of the three components that make up a modern day business, all right? And each of them are very different and odd. And so I want to kind of walk through them. When you think about the formation of a company, I think of it as very much how planets formed. How many of you know how planets form? Anyone? What happens? A cloud of gas, exactly. All right? A cloud of gas does what? Things are moving, and things get concentrated. Are you an astrophysicist? You just like, I picked the one astrophysicist in the group. Okay, perfect. No, he makes a very good point. Think about the beginning of your projects. Think about anything you've ever tried to do in your life. At the very beginning, it was just kind of this vague idea, right? And as you thought more about it, as you learn more, it slowly became more and more real. Startups and building things is the same way. You are what we call gravity. When you are the one that is building a company, your job is what gravity is that you pull things together. And that's what startups are like at the very beginning. It's this very murky world, right? You have a bunch of people, everyone's like, oh yeah, that's kind of a cool idea, I think I'd be interested, but I'm at my job and I don't want to quit. And so, you just have to keep pulling like gravity, like this consistent force around an idea to pull together all of these resources and turn it into something that's real, precipitate it into something tangible. Because otherwise it's just an idea in your head. So if for all of you that are sitting here and you're like, I have an idea of something I want to do, just think about gravity and just the constantness of gravity, right? Gravity in school is taught as a constant value, 9.8 meters second squared. And that's what you have to be to get things done. Consistently try to drive people towards you. Think about the people that you're trying to pull along with you, right? So now you're gravity. The question is you have to find everyone else. So this is an example of a couple, what I would call extraordinary co-founding teams. So behind us, you'll see Microsoft, Google, Twitter, Square, YouTube, WhatsApp. These are products that I can almost guarantee everyone in this room has used. These people have changed the fundamental way that the world works. And if you look at any one of them, you might say, hey, like these people are all extraordinary. Do you think extraordinary people just go to like the extraordinary networking session and just meet each other and then hang out and that's it? Where is this extraordinary networking mentor session? Where is it? It's actually right here. You're at one right now. The thing is, all of these people, like most people, were nobodies at the very beginning. They worked together because they found people that truly believed in them. So in each other, they really believed one another. And because of that, they were able to become something greater than what they were individually. So when you meet people, I hope you have a very high bar of who you're willing to trust and who you're willing to commit to when you're going to build something. Because should you build something that's very important, your standards are being set. So sometimes it's easy to say, oh, I'll just take anyone that thinks my idea is even remotely cool. But why would you do that? Why would you settle for that? And that happens every day. And you see companies and you see good ideas and businesses fail just because they settled for those things. These people didn't settle. They found remarkable people, and they made sure that they could find a way, like gravity, to keep pestering them until they agreed to join with them. And co-founders are really important, right? it's like there's a large amount of people, like how many of you are thinking about starting a business? Or thinking about starting a project that maybe could turn into a business? Hands up, please, higher. Everybody look around, right? That's a lot of people. How many of you think, hands still, keep your hands up, sorry. How many of you are currently doing that alone or plan on doing it alone? Yeah, just a handful, right? But there's a lot of people that talk about, should I have co-founders or not? You can see Reed, Xander, and myself are here. We're at 500 Startups in Mountain View talking to a new batch of freshly invested companies. And, we've been really happy that we were able to find one another and convince each other to not do the other jobs that we had. And, Xander is a brilliant designer. He was going to Apple. Reed was a brilliant engineer. He was going to Adobe. I didn't have a job because I was not brilliant at all. And for some reason, they let me come along on a ride with them. But the main thing is, if you're planning on finding a co-founder and you're planning to start a company with someone, it's very good because it can be a very lonely experience starting a company. And so having someone else that can empathize with you in a very real way is important. For those of you that are starting your company alone, advisors and your friends are going to become even more important because you're going to feel even more isolated doing something that your friends, your family, everyone else is not necessarily going to support. So finding your supporters and keeping them close is going to be the most important thing you can do. Your team, we had an entire session before this talking about how important teams are, so I won't go too much into it. One of the teams that I really, really admire is my friend Albert Filu. He has started a company called AppZoom, and he's in Barcelona in Spain. And what he's done that I think is so brilliant is, even though he's in Barcelona, he had this worldview. He's mostly only known Spain, but he had this idea that building a team for the modern world had to be completely both diverse and representative of the whole world. He felt that if you were going to build a modern internet company, so AppZoom basically does app reviews and tries to help developers develop apps all the way from inception to delivery. He felt that if you were building for the modern world and you're going to be on the internet, that a representative team of the world was required to know what it takes. So look at this group. First of all, you'll notice a lot of ethnic backgrounds. A whole half of their team is not even Spanish. There's Americans, there's people from Britain, there's people from Germany. The number of languages I believe they speak is 32 in a company of 10, 15 people. And he spent years hunting these people down. He specifically would find them either by listening to them, seeing what they wrote online, and would then spend years trying to get them to convince them to come to their company. You have to be insane. How many of you can wait 2 years to find your first employee? Nobody, right? It's I have so much work to do. It's already in the past. But it's really, really hard to give yourself the patience to build something really important. And when you realize that if you actually pick the right person, things will just happen 100 times faster than if you pick 10 of the wrong people, then you'll start to get into a mindset that's slightly different. Now, yes, there's reality. The show must go on. You have to find people along the way and make it work. But fundamentally, you should be looking for people who, like you, have a similar overlap in the way that your soul works. And that's kind of what he's really done when he found all of these people, Claudia and Omar and all these people. And beyond the team that you build, the advisors around you, and these are people that don't necessarily work for you, are here to keep you mentally stable. How many of you lose your mind when you're with your family? How many of you can only be with your family for 6 days in a row, and then day 7 you're I'm going to go insane? Maybe that's just me. Am I the only insane person? When I go home, I love hanging out with my mom and dad, but by day 3, I'm Mom and Dad, I gotta go. I'm flying out of the country. I'm going to Malaysia. Right now, I'm going as far away from you as possible. Advisors are the people that basically catch you when you're going insane. A lot of people think advisors are oh, I have this advisor, he tells me about life, and oh, I have this advisor, he tells me about career. Oh, I have this advisor, he's a coach and helps me with my girlfriend. All of these people are here to keep the major parts of your life intact. Because what you're doing by starting a company or building something and going through all this stress is basically taking your life and putting it into a box and then kicking the box off the side of a cliff. And these people are going to help you keep the very fragile mental psyche that you have protected, which is tough. It's extremely lonely. It's extremely taxing to start a business, to see a vision and try to execute it and have people believe that you can actually do it. Those are all hard things. It's such a sad thing in the world, really, that's a sad thing, that's so hard. But that's a reality. So your advisors, they keep you emotionally stable, and they help you tactically, too, with things like strategy and fundraising and introductions to other people that can help you. That's their main job. And choosing your advisors is an art and a science. You know how many people will, I'll talk to them for 2 minutes, 1 minute. I'll talk to someone for 30 seconds, and I'll get a LinkedIn request and an email that's like, can you be my advisor? I'm like, Young Fook, I don't even know you. I've met you for 30 seconds, man. You're insane. Can you, would you just go up to a girl and be like, hey, let's get married right now? We both don't have time. Some guy told me I only have 27,000 days to live, and if I don't get married right now, it's crazy. We have to do it, right? Advisors are the same way. We should treat them like your friends. You should treat them like people you would bring into the very most inner circle of your life. People just say, oh, well, this guy's got a big name, so I'm just going to hit him up. This guy went to a great school. I want him to be advisor. This guy just started a company and sold it to Google. He's so cool, whatever. He's talking to me on a stage. These things don't matter, right? I like that. Only Cheryl's laughing. No one gets these jokes. So I'm just being laughed at by one person. So I'm very insecure now. But none of that matters. Advisors, like I said, I'm just going to go back. They keep you emotionally stable. They serve you as a nonpartisan sounding board. So what that means is that we keep thinking advisors is like the Dalai Lama or like Richard Branson is my advisor. No, that could just be maybe a really thoughtful friend that's lent his or her ear to you, going through something that most people in this world don't go through and choose not to go through. Keep it simple. Just stay on the rails. That's what their job is. So I don't want you to have, so the one thing I'd like you to, a rule to break is that your advisor does not have to be Elon Musk. What's your name? Wyken? He can be an advisor, right? So just try to keep that in mind. Tactically, for those of you starting a company, I wanted to talk a little bit about number of advisors. There was another thing that I noticed in very young, newer startups where it's just like people will have a Teams page, and on their Teams page, it's like, okay, there's like 4 employees, and then here's our advisors, and it's like 8 pages of people. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. What are all these people giving them advice on? They're going to get so many pieces of advice that eventually they're going to be like, I don't even know what to do. So, and that happens, right? Like, you know, someone will tell you meditate. I just started meditating right now, right? So it's like you just get so much information, you get overloaded. So one thing that I've learned is that you want to keep your advisor sets small. The number of people you talk to should be small for the only reason, which is that all of you will be wrong anyways. There's no way to understand what the future is. If you find an advisor that actually knows what the future is, you don't need any other advisors. Just talk to that person and let everyone go, right? You can you don't have to worry about it. But the point is that you have a few people because most of you will be wrong, and you're just trying to make sure you're not obviously wrong. So what I've seen is that about 6 total is really good. Personally, in my life, I have advisors too. I have 3 mentors, and they always advise me. And I have one for career, I have one for kind of like general life stuff, and I have one for my non-existent love life. So I need to fire that advisor, actually, now I'm talking to you guys about it. And consider their time and commitment to you. So a lot of the other things I would tell you is, just because you have an advisor and you ping them a bunch of questions and it makes you feel good that, oh, I have an advisor, I asked this question, and they validated me, you should think really hard about what you use your advisors for. It's not about asking every question or always going to your advisor. It's about picking up very specific questions that are going to be troublesome for you and choose those only. Their time and commitment, they have a lot of things going on. If you are starting a company, I want to give you very tactical advice because I've seen some very bad things happen in newer entrepreneurial landscapes. So some advisors ask for pay from your startup. This is bad. You should not be giving money to advisors. The point of advice is that it's free because it's advice. And it's supposed to pay you back. So in the US, the way that we have gotten to, which is a little bit of a more mature entrepreneurship market, is that we actually give a little bit of equity. And equity is great because when you split it amongst all the people you love and all the people that are helping you build stuff, and equity in the company terms is what your business is, but it could also be social equity. Your time is equity in many ways. You have 27,000 days. When you give one to someone else, you've given a tiny but important amount of a resource to someone else. And so we give a tiny fraction of a percent to advisors. That's vesting over 2 years. So for those of you that have went and did your fundraising classes and stuff, you can learn about vesting later. I won't go into it here. But the point is you want people to align to your goals, especially your advisors, which is something many people don't do. They just say, this is my advisor, and hit them up on email all the time. And then the advisor's like, why is this person emailing me like 7 times a day for everything? So it's all about trying to pick the major battles that you're going to have and pick those very carefully, and then work with your advisor to figure that out. Back to my favorite photo, because I miss these guys. But when you think about building your team, the other thing we need to think about, and we kind of talk about it, is what is the role and mission for everyone that joins your company? There's a tendency to just hire all your friends, which is actually really smart, because if you're great, then your friends are probably really great too. And like most of my friends at school, they were way smarter than me, so I always tried to go after them. But if you don't have a good idea of what those people are going to help do, then you're actually creating a very bad precedent. You're basically saying, come and join me on a crazy project, but we have no idea what we're going to do. People have hopes and dreams, and when you don't have a clear path to help them along the way, then they cannot feel fulfilled, and then they will basically become jaded or unhappy, and they will leave. So making sure that in your mind, when you're building a team and a set of advisors around you, think about the roles and what they would be doing in the long term, that then you can give them challenges so that they can work their way to what they want to become. So in our case, like I said, Hustler Hacker Designer was something that this guy Dave McClure came up with, but he basically crystallized what we each brought to this company, to Punched. And that was really meaningful because then we understood how to help one another. And that meant that we could work together like a very good engine, working in a cyclical function. Oh, backwards. How many of you are currently looking for people to help you with your project, company, whatever you're building? How many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you are having trouble finding people? This is a thing that I always hear. They're like, I don't know where to find anyone. They're like, I talked to all my friends on Facebook. I sent a Facebook message and no one replied. I'm out of leads. I went on Twitter and all 12 followers said, no, I won't work for your company. So I'm done. It's over, right? I just want to give some tactical advice on recruiting. Where do you find co-founders or founding team members or people to help you build is everywhere. Specifically, I think school, which is where you are, which I know that he was like, you don't need school, so, But actually, that's where you're going to find perhaps the best people to work with. Because you're all exploring things together. You all are in a similar life point. When you're in school, everyone's on the same level playing field. You all are roughly the same age. You're as young as you'll ever be. You're probably as good looking as you'll ever be. You're as in shape as you'll ever be. And that's it. It's all downhill mostly after that. So it's a great place to find people to work on things for a very long time. There's things like this event. There's communities online. The internet has vastly changed the way that we can find people and communicate with people. And you're finding that, at first it was very awkward. You remember like AIM days? You'd go and you'd be like, ASL, right? And now you have like ASL and will you work for me, right? So it's like the same thing happening over and over again. And you should really leverage that. And to convince these smart people to join your company, you will never be able to offer them money or any of these things. In fact, many of you probably don't have any of that to offer today. So you have to really offer a mission and a chance to change the world. And the way to do that is, I'll tell you an example of how I got one of our first engineers, this guy Nat. He was going to go work for a company called GitHub. And for 7 months, I didn't even have his phone number. On Twitter, I would just tweet him every day. When are we going to build cool stuff? By the way, he didn't know who I was and had never met me. I only knew him because my friend Reed told me to go get him. So I said, okay. For 7 months, I just pestered Nat. Every day. Eventually, one day, he emails me back, and he's like, I don't even know who you are. This is actually stalking, and I'm going to go to the police. And I was like, no, I'm Reed's friend. And he's like, oh, well, you should have said that the first time. And I was like, I didn't know. he was, unfortunately, he was going to join GitHub, and then GitHub went really big, and I took him to our tiny little company, so I feel kind of bad. But the thing is, it takes a tremendous amount of persistence. Gravity, right? Gravity is persistent. And so when you're finding these people, you have to give them something to work on that was really meaningful. For him, I knew that he really loved autonomy, and he loved building deployment systems for code. And I really believed that a modern company that we were building at Punched wasn't just like another Yelp. We were truly a technology company, and that autonomy and distribution of our software services was a core pillar in how we'd basically be able to win. So he believed in that too. Enough so that he walked away from a guaranteed job at GitHub as a 22-year-old, right? So it took a while to get there, but we did. And frankly, as a CEO, as a founder, as a person who just gives the most effort in building anything, your job will be recruiting for the rest of your life. My boss today at Flipkart, he's the chief product officer. He spends about a third to half of his entire time recruiting. And that's because we don't have all the good ideas. Actually, the really talented people do. So the best thing you can do is collect as many of them as you can and get out of their way. But this takes a tremendous amount of effort that most people seem to give up on as the first thing that they do. They say, well, I'm trying to build this thing, and I can't find anyone, so I'll build it myself. And that just doesn't make sense. You'll never be able to scale. At Flipkart right now, I've been talking to a lot of the product managers, and they refuse to recruit. They refuse to interview. They always are like, no, I don't have time for interviews. And I'm like, okay, let's do some basic math, right? I have Y amount of work, and I have N number of people. And tomorrow, Y is going to increase, but N isn't. And so if you don't recruit and hire people, then actually the amount of work that you're doing will continuously will have to be done by less and less people, and then the whole thing just crashes. So recruiting for really, really smart and talented people is important. And you can't see it, something about the way this is rendering got messed up, but it says, don't try to use compensation as your primary motivator. People don't actually want money. Studies have shown that $75,000 US is basically the max amount of money where after that it becomes negligible on your happiness. So, inside of your careers, very quickly, you'll be able to attain that, which means that people want something fundamentally different. Remember what I said, you have 27,000 days on this planet, approximately. Those of you, I'm assuming you all are actually higher than average Malaysians. So you'll have more, but not too many more, right? But that's it. And most of you have about 6,000 to 7,000 of those days already completed. So we can't live our whole lives just chasing money. So don't give that to other people either. Don't be part of that problem. And be methodical about it. So my talk is obviously a lot more tactical. There's tons of tools. How many times have I seen people just tell me, but I tried, Niket. I went to this networking event and no one talked to me. I got 100 cards and I sent an email and that's it, right? You need to just be absolutely tactical. You have to be persistent like gravity, right? There's tons of tools on the internet for free that will help you manage pipelines, do anything. That will automate your work. They'll automatically send emails. It'll make your life so much easier. You just have to do this day in and day out. If it was easy, everyone would do it. You're here because you're hoping that something we say will give you a tactical edge. If there's one thing I will tell you that you should take away from my entire talk, it's literally persistence. It means that when people are telling you no, you are ironically enough closer to your goal than you think. The furthest point from your goal is when you never do anything. And the second furthest is the first time you hear no. After that, it only gets better. But it's a very difficult thing to understand. So you have to be methodical. Tools and making sure that you don't just use the way you feel as the way of getting things done is one way to make sure you stay persistent. And that's really important. And the last thing I just want to talk about in this kind of brief thing is your investor. So how many of you are looking for investment or have an investment or would need investment to build whatever you're going to do? Investment meaning either venture capital or some sort of money. No one's building anything for money here, so I don't even need to talk about investors then. What are you building? Yeah. Okay, that was a bit of a mouthful. Let me see if I can say this back. A property management platform specialized with the payment gateways. What does that even do? Sorry, I just don't understand. Easily. Got it. So does everyone here have rent? Hands up if you pay rent to somebody else. Oh, this is great. You guys all own buildings? Man, you guys are way above the average. You guys are definitely living for 30,000 years, or 30,000 days. I totally came in here with the wrong average. But yeah, so he's going to help you get your money out of your bank account into someone else's bank account. That doesn't make it sound very good. He needs you, customers, to use his platform to make this stuff work. But when you choose your customers and your investors, that also matters. One of the things I also see is like you have an idea and someone says, I'll give you money for that. You're like, yes, I'm done. I got the money. I got the investment. But the thing is, once you have taken money from someone, and that becomes then actually a contract, the nature of that relationship changes. Money changes how people react to one another. So your investors, you'll see I have like this like picture of like Superman and Batman, and these guys are both like, they can be your absolute best people that help you out, or they can be your worst enemy. They can literally ruin your company because their incentives are, of course, monetarily driven. And so you have to remember that. So whereas advisors should be backing you for who you are, your team should be backing you for who your mission is, your investors and your customers fundamentally are looking for value. And so the nature of the relationship that you have with them has to be one that you think about in relating that way so that they feel comfortable with it. And if you don't do that, they can become the most terrible burden on your company. And so the best thing to do, by the way, is just get customers. Never take a dime if you can. I highly recommend what Mind Valley did in that if you can avoid it, it's worth it in the long run. And that is basically the three pillars that I want to talk about, your teams and advisors. So I wanted to like actually make this more of a discussion because fundamentally everyone has different stuff. So if I could just like open it up for a bit, maybe like a few minutes to take questions. So think about it. What are your biggest problems getting people? What are your biggest fears about your co-founders? Tell me about it. And tell everyone about it for that matter because we're all in here. None. No one's got any problems. Cheryl. Looks like we didn't need me. This was amazing. MaGIC has done such a wonderful job that everyone is just set. Can I invest in all of your companies? Because you're all set. You know what I mean? I'll cut a check right now. Here we go. Please, yell it out. Thanks. What's your name? Chun. All right. Got it. So the question is, when you're starting a venture, how do you know what you don't know? Is that basically what you're saying? Yeah, how do you deal with like the fact that you are in a new venture, you don't even know what's going on? How do you find people? Okay, it's a good example. So, all right, so let's take his example of basically rent and payment. So the thing is, for instance, is there a, so to your point, you have to find expert communities about what you're working on. And there's always a community somewhere. And the internet has massively changed the way in that we can find these communities anywhere. So whatever you're working on, there's probably a group of people that are like you that love it 10 times more than you. And the question is, how do you find them? So for you, he might go and talk to all of the companies that collect rent and try to understand what are the major problems with this. And inside of those group of people, there's going to be someone that's actually just smarter than just knowing what the problem is. They actively are trying to figure out how to solve it. Does that make sense? And you want to find that person and hire them, by the way. You want to take them out of that business and put them into yours. Because you're getting basically a tremendous amount of domain experience into your area very quickly. So if you're like, I don't know how to market to, let's say you're starting like a restaurant, and you're like, I don't know how to market to people on a footpath thing, right? You have to go find like the restaurant associations here in Malaysia. You could find restaurant owners, people who have been in there for a long time. You could find restaurants that you admire, cold contact them, and basically start asking questions. So the first thing is, the reason why you're really smart is because you realize there's stuff you don't know. And the first thing to do is start asking even more questions. Again, it's counterintuitive, right? Because generally when you say there's stuff I don't know how to start, what's the answer? Ironically enough, the answer is more questions. And that seems, again, weird, but that's actually the best way to go about it.
If we find a partner, so co-founder, how you want to kick them out? If let's say he didn't toward our expectations, say probably our mission or vision goes wrong, or maybe his commitment is less, and so on.
Yeah, this is really tough. So you asked a great question. I don't like this co-founder anymore. How do I kick them out, right? And that could be because they don't jive with you emotionally. They've done something bad. They aren't good for the company. So I'll give you an example. So let me tell you, I didn't tell you about Punched exactly, but we actually had 4 co-founders when we started. And so we had this case. And I want to tell you that on the one side, I was in the wedding of these other 2, and so just don't like tweet this or anything, right? On the other side, for the co-founder that left, I mean, unfortunately, this is a person we never will talk to again. You know, he deeply betrayed our trust. The best thing to do to protect yourself is 2 things. One is when you're building a formal company, vesting. So we have a concept of basically vesting, which is that when you start a company and you all divide up who owns what of the company, before anyone owns it, you can do 2 things. You can set up an amount of time where no one gets any ownership, and that converts. We call that a cliff. So after 1 year, you could say, we'll start vesting our shares, and then a vesting period. And that's basically a way of splitting up the company and saying that you only get it after putting in so many years of work. What that allows you to do is if you want to basically fire someone, you can do so without worrying about them taking a significant chunk of the company. It's a fundamental protection. And all founders, by the way, if any of you are starting a company, you should always get that legal, put in your papers. A lot of people are like, but we're friends, we'd never do this to each other. You know, the way that money and starting companies and power and some even small amounts of success change people is incredible. The best way to protect yourself is to plan up front, use legal measures, and then check in often. You know, I know founders who go to therapy every week to make sure that things like that don't happen. You know, so they set up. You think he's laughing, right? Starting a company, you're actually insane, right? Otherwise, everyone else would do it. There's 7 billion people in the world, and most of them work for someone else. So either those 7 billion people are insane, or we're insane. I don't know which. I'm still figuring it out, right? No more. 2 questions. They made it easy on me. Okay.
Thank you. Hi, Niket.
Yeah.
It was an awesome talk. So I want to ask, like, when you meet someone the first time at a networking event or whatnot, how do you know it's a right fit? In like 3 minutes, say.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a great question. How do you know? Okay. Yes. So what he's asking me to do is define love at first sight. Really easy question. I already told you I have to fire my love advisor. This is like, okay. You know, I've had the pleasure of meeting a tremendous amount of people from varied backgrounds, varied ages, and the one thing that I find about people that I look for is a certain amount of obsession in what they do. It doesn't actually matter what. When you meet someone, can you guys tell when someone's saying things and it sounds like they're saying it because they feel like they should be saying that? Versus just kind of like being like, hey, what's up? Like, and just, but not forcing it. So what I look for specifically is obsession. And it could be anything. Most of the time when I'm meeting people at startups, the first thing they'll do is they'll come up and they'll be like, hi, my name is, and I make, and then they'll look at their shirt because they've got it on their shirt. And then by the time I read what's on their shirt, there's already a card like this. And I'm like, okay. And then they'll quickly tell me for the next 2 minutes and 48 seconds what they do and who they are. And then for 12 seconds, they'll be like, who are you? I fundamentally believe if you find a person that comes up and genuinely talks to you and says and wants to know everything they can about you, and you can sense a certain amount of obsession in the way that they're learning about you, or something they like, or something that they're doing, you'll be able to find, what that will tell you, from my opinion, it's not going to tell you, should I co-found with this person? It's going to tell you, hey, this person's cool, they're different. They're not like everyone else here. They're not coming and saying like, hey, what's up, man? I heard you're an investor. Cheryl sent me over here. Here's my card, right? They're just saying, how are you doing? Like, why are you here? What do you care about? What are your dreams in life? What are your passions? Look for the people who are intensely curious. Those people are worth hanging around. I can't tell you if they're the person that you're going to co-found a company with and help them get married, but more often than not, it'll have started because of some sort of thing like that. Meet as many people as you can and try to be quiet for the first 2 minutes and 48 seconds. Yeah, wonderful.
Okay, I have two questions.
2 questions, double whammy.
So, firstly, how do you run a remote team? And secondly, how do you fire friends?
Oh,
And a try. And if so, how do you do it?
okay, so it's a good question. How do you run a remote team and how do you fire friends? So like the first one's a lot easier than the second one, I think. 10 years ago, remote teams was unthinkable, but people did it, but it was really inefficient. Can you imagine having like some guy come in once a year, tell you what to do and disappear? That's what it was like. India is a great example of this. So India, you know, is this tech powerhouse, but really Indians in India was really just an outsourcing of tech, right? So a bunch of American white guys would come to India and be like, hey, do this work, but don't think and do it while I'm sleeping. And when I wake up, I want it all there. Right? And that's basically Remote Team 101 circa 1985. Recently, with things like Google Hangouts, Skype, even FaceTime, and Slack, and kind of what I would call like synchronous communication methods, running remote teams has been much more preferable. You know, I don't think people wake up every day being like, oh man, I can't wait to get onto this bus for 45 minutes, and now I'm sweaty and I'm at work for my 9 a.m. meeting, and I have a bunch of stuff to do. I think people fundamentally want their own freedom. So remote teams is actually one of the coolest things in the world because in many ways it gives freedom to us to do what we want. We like to live our lives as a mix of things we have to do in our personal life and a mix of things that we do at work. You can't just turn one thing off. It's why when people are at work, and how many of your companies, for instance, like shut off your like Facebook access or your Twitter access at work? It's like, I just don't see the point. How can you take someone and compartmentalize them? So running remote teams requires a tremendous amount of trust, first and foremost. You have to trust that people are going to work hard for you, and that goes back to picking people that can. When you establish trust and a mission for people, they will just do great work. Then your job is to simply give them the tools and and some sort of face time so they can know that they're doing good work. So running remote teams really is about 2 fundamental things: continuous alignment and continuous mission setting. So at the end of the day, you're not going to be there every day to see their work. You want to trust that they're good people, that they're good workers, and keep aligning them and showing them that the work they're doing has impact and continues, and they'll find a way to be highly efficient for you. A lot of people think I should just plan what my remote workers do every day. I think the opposite. I actually think you should try to spend as little time telling them what to do, and just making sure it's clear what the outcome of their work should be, and let them figure it out. So that's kind of a very short version. We can talk more about it. The second one is, how do you fire a friend? This happened to me. I had to fire a friend. It was very messy. It required lawyers. Actually, if I can tell you, it's probably in the top 2 worst things of my entire life that I've ever gone through. Think about all the bad things that have happened to you. Parents might have died. All these, like, you might have gotten really sick and been in the hospital. You might have failed an exam. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. And all of these things. This, I'm telling you right now, was the worst thing I've ever felt, was having to fire a friend and see, after he had betrayed us, and the way that you don't do, the way to do it well is to never have to do it in the first place. And that means protect yourself using legal things and really decide as when you're together what your goals in life aspirations are. I'll tell you a quick story about how we split up Punched. So I didn't believe in splitting up the company evenly. So Xander and Reed, they were like, we should each get 1/3. And I didn't think that we should do that because I felt that they had contributed way more than I did. And so I was like, no, I think you guys should get more. And so we had a discussion. We were living in Reed's grandma's house because none of us could afford an apartment. I had $35 in my bank account. And we were talking about what we would do if we weren't doing this, or if Punch got really big and we were able to, say, use the resources that Punch gave us to do other things. We asked ourselves, what would you do with your life if you didn't have to worry about money and things like this? And we all talked about different things. So Reed and I were really interested in renewable energy sources and kind of like helping humanity move away from a place where it's like basically destroying the earth. Xander was really, really into education, which is something I really deeply care for as well, about giving everyone an opportunity on the planet to become educated in things that they want to. I think the internet is one of the key pillars to, if you think about the world, I'm going to quick tangent. There's like 3 things to me that matter. It's nutrition, disease control, and education. If we can nail all 3 of those really well, then it's a good chance that humanity makes it for at least until the next asteroid arrives. Then we'll have to figure something else out. So we know what we found was that we were actually all extremely aligned as people. And so we did end up splitting the company not perfectly. Reed got 26%, Xander got 25%, and I got 24%. So that shows you that we were all so aligned, and we were still able to find a common ground there, which is pretty cool. But firing a friend, the best way to handle that is to never, ever be in that situation. And if you have to, it breaks like glass. There's no good way.
Wait, sorry.
One last one?
One last question.
All
Quick
right.
one.
Quick one. Yeah, sure. I'll come and talk to you separately in person.
Okay, hi. I just want to ask, let's say you recruit so many great individuals, but how do you keep the team dynamic on? Because like they are good in something, they are great individuals, but they have ultimately everyone have different personality, let's say. So how do you keep the team dynamic going?
Great.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's a fantastic question. It's going to require a longer one, so I'm going to give a very short one. What he's basically talking about is team dynamics and handling personalities is basically about culture and mission. Everyone's different. Everyone believes in different things. Everyone has different motivations. And so to think that everyone actually can be the same is probably unrealistic. The key is basically 2 things. Having a common mission that everyone fundamentally understands so they can drive towards it, and then understanding what individual motivations are for every person on your team and aligning those with your mission. Some people really care about money. There is nothing wrong with that. But that person's very different than the person who is very socially responsible and cares about just helping people. But both of them need to be supported, both financially and socially. So I really believe in development and learning and development. And so as you learn about, so say you're the CEO, right? I do a lot of one-on-ones with my direct reports, and I try to understand in life what they want. And it's kind of just like what Mindvalley does with their employees. They let their employees tell them what they want, and they find ways to align Mindvalley's goals and their goals. Because actually, if you align them, you'll get something much better. Developing a very strong culture, which is based on mission, is the best way you can do that at scale. When you're a very small company, you can take time to talk with everyone every day and do a thing. When you're a company like Flipkart, for instance, we have 7,000 people in our building. You don't have time to do that. So you have to end up relying on building a system that everyone understands and then letting it build upon itself. But taking time with individuals at the very beginning is very key, especially when you're small. So thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope this helps you build stuff. And